Hey, good morning. Happy Saturday, everybody. Christie Hutcherson on the front lines and in the fight every day for you, the American people. Thank you so much for joining us on this storm series. The storm is here. We are fighting the storm, and we're going to give you practical tools and information every single Saturday for the next 3+ weeks with experts in their field. And one of those experts that I have on today is Sheriff Mark Lamb out of the state of Arizona. He's an incredible constitutional sheriff. I have personally known and met Sheriff Lamb for over 2 years. I've personally, me and my team have rode with him personally and his teams in the field while they're apprehending illegals and keeping drugs and trafficking off the street. I am very proud that I personally can call Sheriff Mark Lamb my friend because I believe he's doing the work of the people. Another thing, I'm so excited to launch one of our new partners, and that is MyPillow, Mike Lindell. He's one of those individuals who I absolutely love. He has been working hard and fighting hard for the American people tirelessly and attacked and been canceled by this unconstitutional cancel culture. So if you want to get a MyPillow product, please, right there, order MyPillow products, use promo code WFFA, and you will get an incredible discount up to 80%. Without further ado, I want to bring on Sheriff Mark Lamb because his time is limited today. And so I want to bring him on right now because we have a lot of things to talk about. Good morning, Mark. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Good morning, Christy. How are you doing?
I am excellent. So let's just get right into this. We've got a lot of people registered. There's a lot of information out there. So let's first and foremost start with what is going on at our borders right now. What is it that everybody, the freedom-loving Americans, from a national and domestic security perspective, need to understand what is going on at our borders?
Well, it's a disaster. I mean, the borders are not secure, contrary to what this government wants to continue to tell you. And the statistics say that. You know, I testified in Congress a couple of weeks ago just about the statistics in my county. I am not a border county. For anybody out there listening, I am 71 miles off the border where the I-10 interstate intersects into my county. And I am 52 miles off the border in the desert areas on the south end of my county where the Indian reservation, the Tohono O'odham Indian reservation is. Those are two of the areas where I struggle with the most amount of illegals coming into my county. And when you get down onto the borders in Yuma, I mean, obviously we still got a ton of people crossing there. In the Tucson sector, which would be like Santa Cruz County, Cochise County, Pima County, there's still a ton going on. So it is a huge problem. And what I hope that your viewers will take away is this is not about immigration. This is about human trafficking and drug trafficking into America. They are all intertwined. It's the cartels that are separating the children from the families. And it's not as many family units as they would have you believe. These are, like, for example, in my sector, it's predominantly military-age men.
You know, let's talk about that because, as you know, Sheriff Mark Lamb, you were in a meeting with me over a year ago when I was invited to Governor Ducey's office with me and my team. And so when I have personally, just like you, have been sounding the alarm for 2 years about the single adult males of military fighting age coming into our nation. And that is just increased and increased. I mean, I was just down in Yuma a couple of weeks ago. We've got guys from Russia, Chinese nationals, you've got Ukrainians, you've got Iranians, you've got Yemenis, you name it. They're coming into our borders. How many have been caught on our terrorist watch list to your knowledge?
Well, just this year, 69 so far. And that number could have gone up recently. But, it only took, 8 of them to do 9/11. You have 69 already, and those are the ones that are on the terrorist watch list. Look, I think we've really been slacking lately on monitoring terrorists outside of this United States. I think they've been too busy watching the American people, and who knows how many should be on that list that aren't being caught, and how many are on the list that are got through in the gotaways.
Yeah, let's talk about the gotaways because Mark, Sheriff Mark, that is what keeps me personally up at night as an American citizen. We like to talk about those that we've captured and caught, but I'm here to tell you statistically, northern border, southern border, we have a western border and an East Coast border because we have an Atlantic and a Pacific Ocean that people are coming in on boats and container ships as well. So when you look at a holistic, because that's what I do, I look at a bigger picture, not just the southern border. We are in some serious trouble as Americans. And I don't know about you, Mark, but death to America, that's what these people chant. Hamas, you've got Afghanistanians, you've got people from Iraq, all of these countries who really want to hurt America. And then coupled with China feeding the cartels the synthetics to make fentanyl, I believe that fentanyl is going to be one of those weapons that can be used as a bioweapon against the American people. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, it's not going to be used. It is being used. I mean, and look, Chinese and Russians comprise a good portion of the people coming in certain areas. I just heard a story the other day of a 2-year-old that was wandering around in the desert with a note on him saying who he belonged to, which, you don't know that. They could just put the note of a cartel member here in the United States. And Chinese nationals found him and brought him across and turned him over to the Border Patrol. So look, we're getting Chinese folks coming across. We're getting the fentanyl, which obviously the Chinese are bringing into Mexico, giving to the cartels. The cartels are then turning it into the fentanyl and bringing it into America and poisoning American lives every day to the tune of over 100,000 people a year right now.
So what do you say to Mayorkas and this administration and every single Democratic politician who didn't show up at the border? I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm tired of the political grandstanding on both sides of the fence. I'm tired of the Band-Aids, because that's all I've personally seen, honestly, is Band-Aids. And in my personal view, and looking at state constitutions and our Constitution, Mark, my personal belief is this. This is a national and domestic security issue. Immigration falls under federal, but when it comes to domestic and national security to protect the states, right, the citizens of the states, that's when my personal view is, when you look at that, the governors, the sheriffs, and the law, the state senators and everybody else, they have a duty to protect the citizens of that state. Why aren't we doing more?
Well, I agree. And I would say we are doing a lot. The sheriffs are working hard. We're doing work that isn't our work. We're out there trying to help the federal government do their job because they're not able to do it, or they're not wanting to do it. Look, I don't want it. The Border Patrol agents, the ICE agents, the CBP agents, they do an amazing job. They're overwhelmed because of the policies of Washington, D.C. They're not being supported to the level they should be supported. I think the morale is very low. So now you have guys like myself and other sheriffs here in Arizona who have stepped up and gotten into the fight, and we're doing what we can. And I agree with you. Our state should be able to protect ourselves. Our state should be able to secure our borders if the federal government's not going to do it. Every time we try to do that, the federal government swoops in and tries to stop it. So clearly what it says to me is that we've got to vote better people into office. We've got to do a better job of getting people who understand what the federal government's responsibility is to the American people, what the Constitution says, which is to secure our borders, to give us a good defense. And they are not doing it. And if they're not going to do it, step aside and let us in the state do it, and don't get in our way when we have to return these people back to their respective countries.
Mark, I'm going to ask you a really tough question. And if you need to think it over for a second, because this is going to be a really tough question. So the sheriff is the number one highest law enforcement officer of the land, period. That is it. The buck stops with the sheriff, the elected sheriffs, in my opinion, not appointed sheriffs. And so with that, if the federal government is not upholding the Constitution, if the federal government no longer is holding up the laws that have been passed on the books, why is it that sheriffs are not arresting those individuals who are in that power if they're committing a crime against the Constitution and our own laws? And if you can, what would help you to do that? Would that, having mass amount of individuals from around this, legal citizens of the United States, getting behind you to give you that support, what would it take for us to empower you guys to do that type of job?
Well, first of all, if you're talking about the actual government officials, we tried. Look, we found what we thought was a case that we could, a charge that we could do a state charge. In the end, the Constitution also contains the supremacy clause, and the supremacy clause, the founding fathers, when they put that in there, honestly gives them a lot of cover on doing their job. So first of all, the supremacy clause comes into play. Second of all, for example, we were looking at, there was it's ARS 132323, which It talks about human trafficking, smuggling, or human smuggling organizations. There's part of it that says intentionally, or omission by a public servant in his official public servant duties. So we looked at a couple of the government officials, but in the end, there's case law also that says that that the Secretary of Homeland Security basically can allow and not allow whoever he wants into this country. So either between the supremacy clause or between case law, which is another reason for putting term limits on judges, because judges are legislating from the bench, and we've gotten very far from the Constitution on that. And we've got the executive branch passing executive orders and other mandates that are not within their wheelhouse of what the founding fathers set up. So if you're going to talk Constitution, then we have to look at the whole Constitution. And there are clauses in the Constitution that also protect the federal government, which is very frustrating, which why it goes back to you have to vote these people out. Look, Americans are all complaining right now about who's in office, yet we're the ones that theoretically voted these people in.
So, you know what, I'm going to get back to the terrorists for a second, because I really want our listeners to talk about what's going on from a terrorist perspective about our security and safety. But that is a great segment, because I want to ask you about that, because, you know, Arizona has been this hot button for the election. Kari Lake has a major lawsuit going on. I know Mark Fincham has lawsuits going on the election integrity part. And I get asked all the time, Christie, why aren't the sheriffs doing anything? Why aren't they arresting people? We have all of this evidence. And so, yes, Kari Lake just won a huge victory in court. And we hope that, you know, truth will prevail. Hopefully light will come out of the darkness. But let's talk about that, Lamb, because you and I've had this conversation off camera numerous times about this. Has anybody brought you in your county any real evidence that you can sink your teeth in to do any kind of investigation to make arrests on this front? And if they haven't, what is it that they need to do if they have actual evidence? And why is it important that all of these people saying, why isn't the sheriff doing anything more? Again, we have to get to the Constitution.
Well, first of all, I'm the sheriff of Pinal County. That's where my jurisdiction lies. And no, the answer is no. Nobody has brought me any significant material evidence. So not only that, I have heard the cries of the people. I have gone out and looked for it. I've talked to certain groups that are very active who claim to have had a lot of evidence. None of it pertained to my county. And I have done what I can to do. And we've had mistakes here in our county that we actually went after and looked at those to see if those were malicious in intent. And our investigation showed they were just more incompetence than any maliciousness. Look, I have to uphold the rule of law. The rule of law is black and white for me. I don't just get to go around and say, arrest that person and arrest that person. We have to have evidence that we can take into a court of law. Now, I can't speak to what's going on and what evidence they may or may not have in Maricopa County. All the evidence that my understanding is, all the evidence that Kari Lake is presenting is evidence in Maricopa County. And I wish them the best on that. But nobody has brought me any evidence. Nobody's brought me a stack of ballots here for Pinal County where the signatures are not matching up. And make no mistake, that exists in every election. So the answer is no. And it's frustrating for me too, because I would like to do more. I have asked, I have searched for it. And then I get accused of not wanting to do anything, which is so far from the truth. I have gone out of my way to try to secure our elections here in Pinal County and make people feel comfortable with it. What I am is an election integrity guy. I want to make sure that we have honest and fair elections, and I want the people to believe in those. And that's why I go out and work hard to try to do that. But in the end, you have to have evidence, and nobody's brought me any evidence that certainly not any significant evidence to take to the court. And frankly, they haven't really brought me any evidence at all.
You know, Mark, that's a great question. But I'm going to ask you this, because I have a friend who also is now a congressman. He was a sheriff in Duval County for a long time, John Rutherford. And John Rutherford and we wrote a paper together. And, you know, he's a sheriff, so he knows something about this. And I know you and I briefly talked about this a while back. If the sheriff of the county that all of this evidence is being brought to, and it's legitimate, real evidence that can be investigated and backed up. If that sheriff refuses to do his duty as a sheriff and investigate that truly investigate that, you could have jurisdictional duty to cross over if that evidence was brought to you. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, and no. Yes, but the problem is you still have to have the county attorney accept it. Like everybody, people, they just don't understand how the judicial system works, whether you like it or not. You may not like what I'm saying, but this is how the judicial system works. Let's say if I were to just all of a sudden take a bunch of evidence from somebody else's county and then try to go in, and I still have to submit it through the courts and the attorney and the county attorney of that respective county, because that is where the jurisdiction lies. You can't just go into some other jurisdiction and file a charge. So I would still have to go back into that county's jurisdiction. So you'd still have to have the courts accept it. You would have to have the county attorney accept it. So you could, but there is still a lot involved with that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And again, this is why I tell everybody out there, the most important book you can have besides the Bible is the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights. You have to understand our Constitution, our foundation, where our rule of law comes from, how it's enacted. And then we have to keep the politicians accountable, quite frankly. I'm one of these people, Sheriff Mark Lamb, who believes that our founding fathers also wrote something in the Constitution that states when we have a government who no longer serves the people or natural law, they are so corrupt that they're not serving the will of the people, that the people have the duty, and there's the duty, they have a duty to replace that government with a fair and just government. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I believe we're on this dangerous ground right now. I've seen it. I've been to 30 plus states. We have a lot of communism under the bow of socialism. We have a rogue government, in my opinion, who is totally undermining the Constitution of the land. We have judges, like you said, who are legislating from political ideology instead of constitutional basis. So what, for Americans out there who are so frustrated with all of this, because I know you know the Constitution, what kind of advice can you give to the American people to start thinking about that? And then the second question is going to be, I also believe that we need to get in communication, weekly communication or biweekly communication with our local sheriffs, partner with them and know who they are, right, on a first name basis, and get behind them as well. So can you speak to that?
About what they should do, about what the people should do?
Yes.
Yeah, get behind your sheriffs. Look, it goes back, vote better people in office. Vote people that are constitutionally minded into office. Look, and just because you think you're a constitutionalist doesn't mean that you're always right either. I go to a lot of people that will tell me, "Oh, you got to do this," and I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me where that says that, so that I know." Because if it says it, where I'll go do it. Like there's a lot of people that are misguided too, and they just use it as a blanket statement, but they don't really know what it entails. I will tell you, we are very far off. We have allowed the Constitution to be very several of the articles, we've got the executive branch basically legislating. We've got the judicial branch, as we mentioned, legislating. We've got attacks on the Bill of Rights. Several of the amendments and different things have been adulterated. And we've allowed it. We, the people, have allowed it. What we have to do is we have to understand that where the power is, start organizing as we, the people, in groups. Let's let our votes be heard, and let's start electing good people back into office and getting involved. And it's frustrating for us as sheriffs because we have to deal with the bad politicians that the people elect.
Absolutely. And I love that. We need to have constitutional community. Maybe that's what we need to start doing. We need to partner with local sheriffs who are constitutionally based sheriffs and have constitutional community weekly or biweekly meetings or monthly meetings. And we can bring in constitutional sheriffs and attorneys to talk to the people about what our rights are, so we can be better organized to fight back against the tyranny that is starting to infiltrate our country. So I want to get back to the domestic. Go ahead.
Part of being a constitutionalist is recognizing the people's voice. And when the people vote a certain person in, then I have to honor that they have elected that person to represent them. And then I have to deal with those persons, that elected officials, whatever they do. You can't just pick and choose what you like of the Constitution. I see this happening amongst conservatives a lot. They want the Constitution to apply when they want it to apply, but not when they don't want it to apply. And my job is to make sure it applies all the time. And unfortunately, sometimes you're not going to like that, because the founding fathers, they set that up to protect we the people. And we've got to understand that is our power. That Constitution's our power. Getting back to the basics of the Constitution, understanding it, and electing people that do understand it and want to uphold it.
So Lisa Dick asked, how do we replace an unconstitutional sheriff? There's a difference between an appointed and an elected. So the elected ones, what is on that front? And then I would like you to talk about how do we move to remove an appointed sheriff and turn them into an elected sheriff?
So I don't know a lot about the appointed sheriffs. Those are areas that have gone away from an elected sheriff, and I don't know what the process they use to do that. As far as elected sheriffs, you would have to go through a recall, for example. That's the process that the Constitution and our laws set forth to be able to remove somebody from office, is to have a recall election. Or you just vote them out when the next time comes up and find somebody that is going to uphold the Constitution.
Great question. So Beth McCord is asking, how do we, the people, remove and hold elected officials accountable for their wrongs?
Well, that's going to be the same thing. We have our vote every 2 years, 4 years, or you have recall votes as well. But you're right, Beth, we should be holding people accountable. And I don't think that's happening. I think that politicians now feel like we are their subservients. They don't feel like they serve us. And that's what's frustrating. We've got to be people that recognize, look, I listen to the people. That's why I've gotten into election integrity, because I heard the people's voice that said they weren't comfortable with election integrity. I listen to everybody that brings something to me. I listen to it. Why? Because I still believe that I represent the people. I serve the people of Pinal County, and I try to do that in a fair, as most balanced way that I can, because I do represent people of all different parties as well. But in the end, I am beholden to the people and to the Constitution of this country. And I think that we need people that are beholden to the Constitution of this country and their respective states.
Kathleen Ann asks, how do we elect good people when they can't win because the election laws are being broken and not enforced because of corrupt politicians running elections?
Well, I'll tell you, even our elections here in Arizona, we have had Republican legislatures, Republican Senate. So all of our voting laws here in Arizona were passed by Republicans. And so you're right. Look, this makes it very hard, and we've allowed it to get to this point as a people by being asleep at the wheel, I think. We've continued to not be involved. We've been apathetic because we got money in our bank account and we drive nice cars and we live in nice houses, and we've been apathetic to it. And now the wolf's in the hen house, and it's not easy to get them out, especially when they pass laws that help with voting. But look, in Arizona, we have 28 days or 27 or 28 days that you can vote early ballot. And then those early ballots can be turned in up until the day of the election, which forces another week to count those ballots. These are all things that we can change, but we can't. The only way to change that is putting pressure on your local legislature, your state's legislature, your state Senate, and let's get them to change the voting laws back. Or in some of the states, you can run a ballot initiative. Now, I don't like a ballot initiative necessarily because it goes away from the republic. A republic is where we have elected officials that represent us. If you're talking about a ballot initiative, that becomes a democracy. But ballot initiatives are available under the laws of certain states, Arizona being one of them, where you could pass a ballot initiative. A ballot initiative is how marijuana became legal in the state of Arizona. So the people could put a ballot initiative there, get enough signatures together, and change the voting laws that way.
Great question. So Lori Baker, I like this. Let's get back to someone, because we are being invaded. This is, make no mistake, this is an invasion into the United States of America. It's a purposeful invasion. I believe it's to build up an internal, one of the many reasons why we have open borders is to build up an internal army against, I believe, the American people. And we have a lot of evidence with some other armies that are building up in Mexico and other places in Central and South America as well. But Lori Baker asked, what can we, the people, do to prepare for this impending invasion? We understand the government is corrupt.
Well, Lori, it's not an impending invasion. This invasion's been on now heavy for 2 years. It's been going on for a long time, but it's been a heavy invasion for 2 years. And for anybody who doesn't think it's an invasion, go read the definition of it in a dictionary. An invasion is an incursion of a large group of people into a sphere of activity or a place of, or a large, or an incursion, an unwanted incursion into a space as well. So there's two definitions. I don't exactly remember what they are, but they define it exactly what's going on right at our southern border. We are being invaded. Our country is changing because of what we're seeing at the southern border. Our politics will change because of what we're seeing at the southern border. So there's many things that we can do. Look, the people have more power than they know, and I would advise the people to go read the Constitution and figure out just how much power they have.
You know, Mark, I've tried to have several events down at the border. I mean, how powerful would this be to send a message to Washington, D.C. and to every state governor if you had millions and millions of peaceful, constitutional loving Americans show up along the southern border, locking hands, first and foremost, praying for this nation, 2, and for our politicians, 3, to say no more, not on our watch. We are demanding this to be shut down. We're demanding our borders to be closed down and have a sovereign nation, because without borders, you do not have a sovereign nation. What do you say to something like that? But I can't get them to show up, and that's the problem.
Well, and honestly, that is the problem. Is most Americans, they get angry, but they're not willing to do anything. We're not willing to make some sacrifices to defend our country. And that's what's hard. Like I get people who are frustrated all the time. And sometimes the people that are most complaining the most don't even go vote. And so, yeah, I mean, that would send a strong message. If the people showed up, that would send an extremely strong message to any government official that, hey, look, I better take notice of this. But right now, nobody shows up. Nobody really, I mean, I feel like I'm on an island sometimes out there saying the stuff I say, and nobody really, there's nobody there behind you. So why would they change? And they're just continue to do it the way they want to do it. They feel like the people maybe just don't care enough.
You know, Scott Gallagher out of Texas saw a guy with a machete in my Texas neighborhood about 3 weeks ago over his shoulder, walking with an orange shirt with tats on. These are probably gang members who are affiliated with the cartel. This is what's infiltrating into our country right now. As a mom, I'm a mom. As a parent, I know you're a parent. Doesn't this frighten you, even as a sheriff, that the type of criminals who are doing horrible things to legal American citizens because of these policies?
Well, I mean, look, I don't live in fear. I try to live faithfully and confidently. But it should bring some concern at minimum, and fear at probably in the hearts of many Americans with who we've let into this country. There was over 42,000 people. I don't know if it was in 1 year or 2 years. Either way, it's a lot. I think it was in 1 year. 42,000 people that had been convicted of crimes here in America that were now trying to come back in and were caught at the border, or who were wanted by law enforcement here in America. So that just tells you what kind of people. A lot of them are people that are not good people. They want to come in, they commit crimes. They've committed crimes here in this country already. And then they mix in some good people in there so the politician in Washington can talk about that.
Yeah, and we're hearing Venezuela and all these other countries are emptying out their jails and ushering them to the border. So we're seeing a huge uptick in criminal. We're going to see a huge uptick of criminal activity, rapes, murders, all sorts of stuff in our own personal communities. And again, I travel all over, Sheriff Lamb, and I still get so frustrated because people do not understand, and they can't wrap their brain around the fact that whether you live in an urban center or a rural community, I don't care how far away as Michigan or in the center of the heart of this country, you are a border state right now. Can you speak to that and let people understand why we say you're a border state?
I went to Congress 2 weeks ago, testified, and the premise of the testimony was what happens in my backyard will be in your front yard tomorrow. So just because it's happening in Arizona or Texas or New Mexico or California doesn't mean it's not your problem. My county is between Phoenix and Tucson. As I mentioned, if you were on the beginning of the broadcast, I am not a border county. I'm 71 miles off the border where the I-10 interstate comes through 52 miles off the border in the desert area. And I can go out there right now. My guys are probably out pulling traffic stops on the I-10 freeway. We've had a 377% increase in vehicles containing human trafficking or smuggling, a 461% increase in vehicles pursuits involving human smuggling or human trafficking. We have seen a 600% increase in fentanyl into our county. Now, these are drugs that were not designed to stay in my county. Neither were the people. Almost all of it is just going through my county, and it's designed to go to other states. The majority of it is designed to go through to the other states of the union, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing places in the Midwest and the East Coast that are being inundated with people that are here illegally, and then drugs like fentanyl and other dangerous drugs that are killing people, poisoning Americans. But it all comes right through here, through the Arizona borders, through the Texas borders. A little bit, New Mexico's picking up, and California obviously has always had.
Now, Sheriff Mark Lamb, I'm going to turn to being a little more graphic about some things because, the horrific things that are taking place, not only at the border, we have organ trafficking, you have infant trafficking, you have weapons trafficking. There's a lot of other things that are coming into the United States of America. And I know the bodies that are strewn across the desert, the people don't understand that the cartel have operational control, not just at our borders, but they have kind of satellite locations set up throughout the United States. And I get asked all the time, well, somebody comes over, they pay the cartel to get through. And that's another thing that I really want to talk about. Every person who crosses that border has paid the cartel in one way or another. And if they don't do what they need them to do, and once they get into the United States, there's a serious consequence to them or their family members.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, they're raping the women when they do come across. I think 8 of 10 women is a statistic I heard a year ago being raped. We catch them when they leave them for dead in the desert. As this gets hotter out here in Arizona, we'll get more and more 911 calls from the actual smugglers saying they've left somebody behind that's on their deathbed or that's lost or hurt or injured. We had a lady that we caught. She had a baggie full of pills. She had 50 pills in this bag. And we asked her what the pills were. And she said, well, when I was going to cross the border, I knew I'd be raped multiple times. These are morning after pills. I mean, where do we get to as a country that we put politics in front of people, that we've lost our moral compass so bad that we put politics in front of people? This is what we deal with on a daily basis. And it goes up during the summer, our humanitarian missions that we have to do where we have to go save people. So yeah, this is a big problem. And then what the cartel also understands is they also understand how many times can they sell you a pill? Once. But how many times can they sell you a woman or a child for sex? Hundreds. And that is what a lot of the women and the children are being put into, is the sex trade here in America. And then, like you said, the men are being extorted. They don't have enough money to cross, so they say, okay, pay us a fraction now, and you can pay off the rest of it when you get to where you're supposed to go. And then they tax them, and they never get out from underneath it. And like you said, if they don't pay it, they'll hurt their families.
Yeah, we've even had stories where they've, literally sawed off fingers, limbs, things like that. Or they'll say, we have Johnny, to a family member in the United States, and say, well, I know we asked for X amount of dollars, but you're going to have to bring us more. We're going to start shipping him into you in pieces. That stuff happens all the time too.
Well, anything you've heard about the cartel graphic wise is probably true and much worse. They are not above harvesting organs. They are not above cutting people into pieces. They execute people all the time. They don't care who you are. If you get in the way of their business, which is trafficking of humans and drugs into America and other countries, then you will die.
100%. Mark, I've been down many, many times to Arizona. One particular sector, if you could kind of talk about, I call it no man's land. And I'll never forget, I was with you, and I think you're one of your deputy, Chris. And when I had explained that we were going to this sector of Arivaca, and we had to drive. There's sat phones only. This is a heavily Sinaloa cartel area. They're bringing in terrorists. We have photographs, some serious photographs of people being brought in. And I never will forget what you told my team. You asked us, do we have weapons, and how many bullets do we have? And that has stuck with me. And I tell that story because this is on our soil. I mean, this is no laughing matter. So can you speak to these particular sectors? I mean, that's where we've come as a country because of the open border policies.
Yeah, they're armed. They're protecting their loads. These are billion-dollar organizations. They went from making $500 million a year to $13 billion a year, and they're trafficking. Their product is humans and drugs, and they're going to protect that product not just from us, but they're going to protect it from rip crews, which are other drug dealers or other people that are going to come down and steal their loads, whether it be humans or drugs, and then go up and sell them in their own respective communities after they've taken them from the cartels. So very dangerous business. We're seeing more and more guns. They're enlisting American citizens into their trafficking. They're getting children to go down and pick people up, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids to drive down to counties like mine or other counties to pick people up that have just come through the deserts, come across illegally, those gotaways you hear about, getting into cars, driving them back up to Phoenix. And those are the loads that we catch on the I-10 freeway all the time. But you'll hear the left talk about, well, they're Americans. Yeah, they're Americans, but they're working for the cartels. They've been enlisted by the cartels, and they are trafficking illegals.
Mark, great segment to this question. So when I was in Yuma a couple of weeks ago, two things I want to really hit on. One is in the Yuma sector, and this is being covered up because I went back a couple of weeks ago. I broke this story 2 weeks before December. And we were down there with Chief Rich Jessup at the time. And there is the largest highly sophisticated tunnel system ever found on our soil was found. And we were showing it 2 weeks before live. We had federal agencies. We had 2 scientists from Washington, D.C. supposedly studying this tunnel. And on my team, we have people who understand the mining industry. They have very special skill sets. And looking at how sophisticated this tunnel is and the equipment and everything that it took, it's 4 football fields long, 25 feet under the ground, fortified walls, ceilings, fiber optics, a rail system, ventilation, air conditioning, all of these things. And, and it's a highly trafficked area where you have sensors and things like that where Border Patrol come in and out. I don't believe that our government did not know that this tunnel existed. I believe that this tunnel is being used for some very nefarious activity. Have you even heard in the state of Arizona that this tunnel is there and that they're investigating it?
Well, tunnels has been something they've used for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, look, they can afford to hire the best engineers. They can afford to hire the people that are the good contractors. They can afford to build tunnels like this. I hear of tunnels all the time. I've heard of this tunnel as well. I don't know what they've done to them. Usually what they do is they blow them up, collapse them after that. But the cartels just build more, dig more. I mean, they have so much money, they can do whatever they want to do because we've allowed their business to flourish over the last 2 years, especially.
Give a figure of a weekly income of one of the cartels alone in your guesstimation.
I don't even know. I would guess, if they're making $13 billion a year, you'd have to break it down. I mean, it's $1 billion a month, basically. So 250 million a week, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. And obviously there's a little fluctuation in there for when, how many people they have coming across, but they're making as much money, if not way more money off of bodies, which is humans, people being trafficked, not dead bodies, but they're making money off of, we call them bodies, but these are the actual illegals being trafficked into America. They're making more money off of that than they are from drugs right now. And then the fact that the drugs are so cheap in America, I don't think meth has ever been as cheap as it is now. Fentanyl pills here in Arizona can range between 5 to 50 cents a pill. So supply is obviously extremely high because the price is low.
I was up in California after I left Yuma, Arizona, and I was all the way up in Oakland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And we were doing what we call Operation Schoolyard. And this is a project of Women Fighting for Americas because we're trying to sound the alarm to parents because right now the drug cartels are what you just said. They're recruiting not just to be their mules and their facilitators of all of this illegal activity. They're also recruiting high schoolers and junior high schoolers to recruit other junior high and high schoolers for the sex trade, for their sex trade industry. Mark, can you talk about that? And then my team's going to put that question back up on the screen, Julie, in just a second.
So are they trafficking the children, the high
So
schoolers?
they're recruiting all over the United States. So this particular sector in Oakland, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, there are gang members, which are an arm of the Sinaloa cartel in this particular area. And they are actively right now sitting outside of junior high and high schools, recruiting children directly from their schools, both private and the public, to for the sex trade industry. This is going on all over the United States. Again, this is very serious stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that's anything new. I mean, that's, they've been recruiting children for a long time into the sex trade. As far as the cartels, they're all about making money, and they have zero care for humans whatsoever. And so they'll sell you for sex. They'll extort you for more money. They'll charge you to come across the border. They'll charge you to sell drugs. I mean, whatever they can make money off, they will. They have zero regard for human life. So that's been going on for a while, and I can only assume that they are every day building that repertoire, that business model that they have.
So Susan Desario is asking, Sheriff Lamb, what would you suggest we do to help support our good sheriffs and build a rapport with them? And what is needed to build a constitutional community to support our sheriff's offices and towns? Second question I can answer. Your Women Fighting for America is helping you do that, but I would like for you to answer both of those as well.
Yeah, so like I have a citizens posse, I have a patrol posse, I have citizens on patrol. I've got a lot of different areas where people can come and volunteer. Just staying in communication with your sheriff, supporting your sheriff if he's a good sheriff, continuing to encourage him to do what's right and stand up in the face of these things. Look, when I was standing up against the lockdowns, and I stood against the mask mandates, and I stood against the vaccine mandates, some days I felt like I was all alone on an island, that nobody was there with me sometimes. So just knowing that people support you, when I feel the support of my citizens, it emboldens me. It makes me feel like I can, it helps me continue to go out and stand up for the Constitution and the people's rights. So I would say just supporting it goes a lot further than what you think it goes. So get out there, support your sheriff, make sure you get them, they get reelected. You can support them financially. You can support them, on their reelections. You can support them with the programs they put in place. You can get involved in the sheriff's offices if they have programs available. There's a lot of ways you can get involved.
So I want to switch to something that's very important. We had a conversation, gosh, it was a while ago, Sheriff Mark Lamb, but I just got back from speaking at the United Nations, and I was really surprised that I got invited to go speak on counterterrorism and human rights. But I was really glad that I went. As a Christian, I believe that God wanted me to see the inside of what their next moves are. And this goes back to a conversation that you and I had, that you had spoke to me about almost a year ago when you were at a conference. And every year we have what's called our U.S. intelligence community. They put out an annual report on a threat assessment. And this was talked about. And one of those threat assessments, this was what was really interesting to me. You would think that the number one threat, and this was the word that they used, lethal, by the way, lethal threat. And I know you know that words matter. So lethal threat, the number one lethal threat facing the United States of America right now is not terrorism, is not open borders with the terrorists coming across our country. It is transnational, ethnic, racially motivated violence. And some of the other words that they used, Sheriff Lamb, were people who are putting out disinformation. And I'm going to say it's what they believe is disinformation. Right-wing extremist, basically MAGA. And so some of this, there were some other languages that they used. This right here really piqued my interest, and it actually gave me a red flag. And it made me think about that conversation you had when you were in your sheriff's meeting with the federal governments about the parents and different things. Can you explain what I'm talking about and what you experienced in that conference?
Yeah, I was at a major counties conference sitting in an intel meeting. Sorry, I'm under the weather today, but we had one of the chiefs from DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, get up and talk about how their primary threat was domestic violence terrorism. So basically the Americans, saying that, yes, it's going to be people that don't believe that the elections were legit, or that January 6th wasn't an insurrection who were involved in it, or people that are showing up to school board meetings, or veterans, or right-wing extreme groups, and all these things. Honestly, my blood was boiling. So as soon as I was done, I hit the mic and I said, I just can't believe what I heard. Like, not only did you describe me, but you described every American who believes contrary to administration. I said, how un-American to determine that they are your greatest threat. I said, you didn't mention Antifa or BLM, and they literally wreaked havoc on our communities for the last 2 years. You did not mention the 300,000 people that are crossing into this country every month, many of whom hate America, they want to do harm to America. They didn't mention the leading cause of death in America, which is fentanyl, which is killing and poisoning American lives every day. I said, you didn't mention any of that. You just determined that we, the American people, are your primary threat. I said, that is not only disgusting, it is absolutely unacceptable. And I don't know where you even come up with that. And he's like, well, Sheriff, we apply the law equally. And I said, well, your actions say otherwise. So look, this is clearly, if you don't believe what they're telling you, then you're going to be the enemy. And I'm sure I'm listed on that list of enemies, because I'm not going to stand for that. I believe in this country. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the American people. And I believe in the freedom that God gave us, that the Father secured through the Constitution. That's what I believe in. And I'm going to fight for those things every day.
Kate is asking, and I'm going to follow up with kind of a little bit better of question of this. So can the governor of the states have authority to stop this since this is a national security issue? But also, what can we do because that's what their plans are, Mark, right? I know from an international law perspective, because United States is the member state of the United Nations. So they're going to be voting on all of these laws come June. And so this is going to be international law, and it's also with the WHO and other things that I'm not going to get into today, with our own federal government also saying this. What can we do to stop this tsunami? This is a massive breach of the Constitution, and we should be able to be prepared. And what do we need to do to push back against this, in your opinion?
So what's the question? Can the governor?
So what can we? I don't think the governor has any. I think she might be talking about the terrorists. But let's talk about what you heard.
I got confused because I know she asked the question.
Yeah, I think that has to do with maybe the influx of illegals. I want to stay on this because this is a very serious issue. When our own federal government is deeming the American people to be the #1 national lethal threat, what can we do? Because that is their mindset. What can we do as American citizens to push back against this, with you as a law enforcement officer as well?
So I think that people want to automatically throw it on us to fix. We still have very stringent constitutional laws that, remember, the Constitution also, it really is designed to restrict government. So my ability to do stuff is within the bounds of the Constitution as well. People want me to fix a problem that they created by voting people into office, by not getting involved, and by not being active, by not getting out and running. Look, there's nothing fun about running for office. I've been accused of things and things that I couldn't fathom that I would ever be accused of. This is how ugly it is, and half of the time it comes from your own people. But the reality is, we have been apathetic to this, and we have not been out, and we have not been involved like we should have, and we have not gotten out and voted and made sure that we got the right people in office. And just because we don't get the right people in office, we can't always cry foul either after it doesn't go in our favor. The reality is, we had an opportunity in 2022 to really send a strong message, and we sent a weak message. Why? Because the majority of us, our bank accounts still had good enough money in it. We were still driving nice cars, and still, I'm afraid that we may not wake up in time until it's already when we're really being affected on our daily living life. But the fact is they've been robbing us blind for a long time. And that's why it's important to be active and make sure that we elect correct people, so that we don't have to deal with the issues that we're dealing with here. I'm going to go back to the fact that the best way to change this is by voting better people into office and holding those elected officials accountable. Right now, when you got guys that have served in there for 40 years, do you think they have any accountability to the people? They don't feel any accountability because we've let them sit in there for so long. So they don't feel like they serve you anymore. And we've got to take that power back to where they serve us, not we serve them.
Yeah. And, we got to get rid of the big machine. And I don't care if you have an RD or an I behind your name. There's always corruption in all of the parties, even the GOP. It's the next in line. And I'm really disappointed with our own party because it's all about the money for them. My husband ran for office and we literally were sat down by Lenny Curry at the time, he's corrupt. He's the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida, and told us, it doesn't matter about your ideas. It's all about the money that you can raise. So this is what I'm going to tell the American people right now. And this is a great segment because I'm going to announce something to you guys today about Sheriff Lamb. So when you have good people that are willing to step up and run for office, two things. Women Fighting for America is going to tell you how to vet them. There is a way to truly vet a candidate. People will get up and say a whole lot of stuff. Some of them are more elegant than others. They can be charismatic. Look at Obama while they're undermining everything you do. You have to go back to people normally all the way back to their college days. And I'm not going to get into that today, but you have to look at their papers that they've written, go back to their past, see what they've said. People fundamentally don't change typically after or during college. That's where they're really formulated with their opinions. And then you have to ask them really tough questions about the Constitution. If they don't know the Constitution, don't even consider them to run for office. I'm telling you guys, you have to have constitutionally based people. And then you have to support them financially. You need to be boots on the ground. Like Mark said, Julie, can you bring Mark back up here? When good people are willing to run, don't always look at those that the GOP is pushing forth or your party, the Democratic Party. Find good men and women who are willing, who are educated on the Constitution and willing to stand, and then financially support them. Get out and do signs, door knock, do whatever you can. And then more importantly, guess what? When you're able to vote, don't mail in your doggone ballots. Go and stand. Don't leave that line, because here's a tip. When the polls close, if you're in line, they have to let you in, even if it's 7 hours later, if it's wrapping around blocks and city blocks, you still have the right to vote in person. Stop giving other people excuses for our failure, for your own failures. You are part of this. You are the solution. Don't be part of the problem. And I am so glad that Sheriff Lamb, and I'm kind of sad in a way, because we need you as a sheriff desperately. And I sure hope that you find a really good constitutional sheriff that you can endorse to replace you. But Sheriff Lamb is willing to step up, and he is running for Senate. And we need good men like Sheriff Lamb in the Senate seat. So thank you. God bless you for doing that. So I'm going to have you talk about that for a second.
I haven't announced it yet, but I am strongly considering
it. Whoopsies.
I'm strongly considering running for Senate. And look, I think that Arizona, what you're seeing on a national level of who we've elected is not indicative of what Arizona is and what the people believe. And it's because we have fought ourselves amongst the Republican Party, and we have done a bad job. And we end up they end up taking these offices from us. And so we've got to do a better job of getting out there. And look, I just feel like I've got to get more involved. I feel compelled to do this. So my wife and I are seriously praying about it, seriously considering it. And it's likely we may make a run at the Senate. But you're right. One of the first questions they ask you anywhere you go is, can you raise the money? Or he can't raise the money. So hopefully, if I do this, hopefully people will show up. I've got to have a tremendous amount of money to be able to. It's crazy. You need millions of dollars to run for a job that pays $174,000 a year. So I am not a wealthy man. It's one of the good things that I understand just how this economy is affecting the average American family. I am the average American family. I understand that it's killing us on the on our price of fuel, our price of food. I am one of those guys. I'm not a wealthy person. I'm not a millionaire trying to run for an office. I am a guy that lives basically paycheck to paycheck. So I'm one of you folks. And we've got to get more people that understand that. People that are still in touch with what society is, not these guys that are millionaires and billionaires running for offices, which is what we tend to get. And why? Because it goes back to what Christie says. Because it's all about what the money is, what you can raise, and it's not about your ideas. So I hopefully, if I do it, that people will get behind me and support me. And I will assure you, we will make sure that there is somebody here behind me in this sheriff's office that will absolutely pick up the mantle and carry the torch for constitutional being, constitutionally minded in this county and protecting the people and protecting them, not just from the bad guys, but from government overreach.
I love that. You want to, like everyone's asking, what can we do? What can we do? Well, one of the things, Sheriff Mark Lamb, whether it's my organization, and that I'm actually a woman who puts her feet where her mouth is. I'm in the field. I'm boots on the ground. I'm doing what I can. I'm doing my part. I walked away from, I stepped down as CEO of my own company. I haven't had a salary literally in over 3.5 years. And I am literally spending my own personal money to fight for our country and our nation. My family fled Stalin. My family were thrown in the gulags. I'm a Jew on my mother's side. I'm from the Natinsky family. And my papa and great grandfather would tell me the stories. And I see it infiltrating into our country, and it makes me mad as hell. And I'm like, and people are sleeping because we haven't had tanks roll through our city. You know what you can do as an American citizen? You can fund organizations like Women Fighting for America, because I'm not expecting everybody to be boots on the ground. You can fund Sheriff Mark Lamb if he decides to run for Senate, or even elected sheriffs. When you find them and you vet them thoroughly, put your money behind them, put your time behind them, put your talents behind them, volunteer, social media, get it out there. We have to fight back against the big lobbyists, the big corporation money, the corrupt politicians, because they have the millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why? Because most of them are bought off. When you're in office, I'm going to be quite frank, when you're in office more than 8 to 12 years, you are owned by somebody, 100%. And I call it office hopping too. So when you run for Senate, to the state representative, to a governor, you're still owned. And you know what? We, the people, when you put $10 down, and there's 20 million of you putting $10 down to get behind real people who are going to be your voice, that's powerful. And we can outwit and outsmart and outfund them. Right, Sheriff Lamb?
That's right. You can. And I'm just looking at all the comments. I don't know. I need my glasses on.
I know, right? That's why I wear them. Stand with Lamb. I love you, Lamb. We the people get behind Lamb.
Honestly, somebody said, bring on the truth. Look, I'm going to give you the truth. It's not always what you want to hear. It's not going to be what you want to hear. But what you got to understand is I believe in the Constitution, the truth. And sometimes, just like your parents, it's not what you want to hear. But in the end, I'm trying to do what's right for this country and what this country was built on. And I feel like I could do that at another level. It's hard for me to leave because I love this job of being sheriff. I really do love it. But just seeing the support of people like this, it means the world to me. And let me tell you, there's nothing fun about politics. I already told you, I've been accused of being a philanderer, that my wife and I, we've all sorts of stuff, accused of just the craziest things that you could think of. And most of that comes from your own party. And that's how sad this is. So hopefully the people will stand behind me. I promise you, I'm a good person that is just trying to do right by the people. And whether hopefully, maybe I'm just a one-term senator because I go in there and do what's right for the people. And maybe they don't want me in there. I don't know. But I want to represent the people. And I believe in this country. I believe in what it was founded on. And I believe in the principles of this country. And just seeing the support of the people makes me realize why I do this every day, why I get up, and why I go through some of the hard times that come with being a public official. But I am one of those people that believes that I serve the people. So it's just.
And I love that, because you know what? Egos, there's no time in parties or anything else in any movement to fight for our liberty and our freedoms. We need to lay down the egos. And leaders need to come together, and they need to learn to listen. We have forgotten to listen to each other. And, we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, we can come together and figure out collective solutions by bouncing off of each other and saying, this is what we need to push out as the narrative. This is the action steps that we need to do, because we have a huge enemy that we're fighting. And you know what? The one thing I have to give Sheriff Lamb to the communists, to the left, to the Democrats, is that by God, to the death of them, they will stand by each other. They will not infight. They will put people in place because they have a very serious agenda. And we have a problem in our own movement, in the conservative movement, because you're right. A lot of the arrows come from within. I've personally been accused of being a grifter, Sheriff Lamb, a white supremacist. That was one of my favorites because I'm a Jew. A racist, you name it. But you know what? Just like you, Sheriff
Those are
Lamb,
the
we both have big shoulders.
when they start attacking your family and your children and saying that, because I'm a religious man, they attack my personal values, and just, we have a saying in our house: you want to know what you did wrong in life? Run for office. You'll find out whether you did it or didn't do it. You're going to find out just what you did. So look, I know I have to go, but look, folks, we're in a storm in this country, and in some areas, the water is just downright angry. Publius Syrus says that anybody can hold the helm when the seas are calm. You need somebody that's going to be able to hold the helm, and the seas are anything but calm right now. The difference between buffaloes and cows, there's Colorado, you go, and you'll have buffalo and cows in the same field. And when the storms comes over the Rockies, the cows will walk away from the storm, and they try to get away from it, but the storm catches them. And because they're walking with the storm, it ends up being in the storm a lot longer. The buffalo, on the other hand, when he sees the storm coming over the mountain, he charges head into the storm. And the storm still gets him, but he gets through it a lot quicker because he leaned into the storm, went right into it. And so I want to end with just a quote that I love that's it's in a book from As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I used it in my book as well. So American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World, and I have American Sheriff Rules to Live By. You can get those at americansheriff.store. I sign those books and send them out. But in there I say, it says, keep your hand firmly upon the helm of thought. In the bark of your soul reclines the commanding master. He does but sleep. Wake him. Self-control is strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Say unto your heart, peace, be still. We all have a commanding master inside of them. You better wake him up. You better get him up to the helm of the ship to navigate these difficult waters. And you've got to know that your strength is your calmness, your ability to not fall into the traps that they set for you, to not get into the division that they want to create, to hold tight to the helm of the ship, go in the direction you know, use your moral compass, use your compass of right and goodness to navigate you to the other side, and go head into the storm. I'm willing to go head into the storm. Hopefully people will support me on that. And let's see if we can't. We're going to fix this country. We will fix it. It's divine providence that we will fix this country. But let's do it now, sooner than later.
I love that, Sheriff Lamb. I know you have to go. You have some other commitments. You know what, America? We the people. Let's go into the storm together. Let's elect individuals like Sheriff Mark Lamb to higher offices. Let's elevate these type of people. Get behind organizations who are fighting the good fight on the ground for you, the American people. But we can't do it alone. We have to lock hands. We have to become a strong tapestry, a rope. Let's do this, and let's go to the storm together. Thank you, Sheriff Mark Lamb. I would love to have you back on when you decide to officially announce. Hopefully I will be praying with you and Janelle. You guys are fantastic. I am so proud and glad that God brought me in your path, and I call you a friend, and I hope that's okay.
I do. I call you a friend too. And thank you, Christie, for all you do. You're a patriot. You're passionate. I love it. And you're one that puts your money where your mouth is. And so I love it. And thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. God bless you. And
everybody.
All right, America. That was incredible. I love that. Sheriff Mark Lamb. I love that analogy about the buffalo. I'm actually going to ask him if I can pull that, and I'm going to put that on all of our social media and on our webpage. That was such a beautiful analogy of where we are right now, and it fits in with our storm series, right? We are in a storm. We are in a tsunami. The tsunami is headed towards America. Most of it's already hit the ground, but the turmoil that we're going to experience, we haven't quite yet experienced that yet. And we will be heading into the storm. But you know what? Let's lock arms. Let's lock hands. And let's run into the storm together. What does that mean? What does that look like, running into a storm together? That means we're going to have to sacrifice something or multiple things. Sacrifice is so key to winning the battle. Our founding fathers, look at what they did. They sacrificed everything, their time, their talents, their treasures, their families, their lives. They did this because they knew they needed to break off the chains of tyranny from England. And they wanted something better for the future, for their children, their children's children, and the legacy. They wanted freedom and liberty and justice. And no, was it perfect at the beginning? But America is one of the most perfect country. Why would everybody want to be breaking in here if it wasn't? The rhetoric that they're telling you in our school systems and on the TV, that America's hate-filled, that we're racist, we're bigots, we're all of these things. We're not. We're an incredible nation of incredible people of all different backgrounds. Liberty, the light of freedom. It rings here in our hearts, our minds. If you're not willing to stand and sacrifice, this country will fade. We are at a serious crossroads. And I'm here to tell you, just like Mark Lamb just did, communism has rooted itself in our government. You heard it from him saying he was in a meeting with our own Justice Department saying every freedom-loving American, every constitutional-loving American, every parent, you are terrorists. You are the number one lethal threat. Sheriff Mark Lamb, according to our own federal government, is a lethal threat against them in our country. If we do not stand up and join forces, we will not have this country. And what does that look like, joining forces? What is that looking like, running into the storm together? That means we need your talents, whether it's volunteering for Sheriff Mark Lamb's campaign, hopefully he'll announce, whether it's being trained on how to truly find, identify, and vet real candidates who aren't going to sell your soul in this country down once they get behind the lobbyist. We're training you how to do that. I can't do it alone. Please, you see that barcode to the left right there, that barcode that says Venmo? And if you don't want to do Venmo, you can go to our webpage, Women Fighting for America. You can donate, you can send checks. I am telling you, we are literally running out of funds. I can't keep funding this myself. We need you to partner with us. We need you to be a strategic partner in this fight to save America. Your donations go to me being in the field. Your donations help me to keep this going. Your donations help me to bring Sheriff Mark Lamb and different patriots on to give you training. This helps me to come to your community. If you want me to bring Sheriff Mark Lamb and other patriots to train you, teach you, military guys in your own communities, you've got to support us. You've got to join the fight. And then if you have major talents, if you know social media, if you know how to get around their algorithms, if you can post this, just keep every day sharing this, liking, sharing, liking, posting it on all of your social media. Get other people to join. Tell us about this. Spread the news. Come to the border. Did you hear Mark Lamb, Sheriff Lamb? Come to the border in the millions. Let's lock arms. No more, not on our watch. Be the watchman. One person is not powerful. But when we lock arms and we are roped and tied to one another and another and another and another, it becomes powerful. Get engaged. WFFA.win. WFFA.win. God bless you guys. I hope you've really enjoyed this. We're going to do another series, In the Storm, next Saturday. I will be announcing on Monday who our next speaker will be. So you're not going to want to miss this. You have to register to ask questions. You must register to be on this show and also to get the replay. So WFFA.win. Also, if you want to, MyPillow, I actually have MyPillow. I've had this for over 12 years. I love MyPillow. It's an incredible, and I was so excited to hear about MyPillow 2.0 because now it has that cooling mechanism in it. And I just got mine, and I can tell you, I freaking love it. So if you want to buy some MyPillow products, you can do that while supporting us as well. Use promo code WFFA. WFFA is your promo code. You will get great discounts up to 85%. Go to mypillow.com/WFFA. Put in that promo code. I love you guys. I fight tirelessly for you and for your children and your children's children. I do this on the front lines for you. Awesome. I'm so excited. Brighty on TV. I said yes. It's called On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson on Brighty on TV. My very first show is going to air tomorrow, Sunday. That is tomorrow, Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 1 hour, called On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. My very first guest is Ann Vandersteel, and we're going to be talking about banks, borders, and a whole lot of other things that are going on in the health realm. You're not going to want to miss it. I go in a little bit deeper about the United Nations. So Brighty on TV tomorrow. It's 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Please, please, please get on there. For Brighty on to keep me on there, we're going to have big listenership and viewership. So please get on there. This is what you can do. Part of that is getting involved. And if you want to have more information, text FIGHT to 91776. Get in this fight to save America. God bless you guys. God bless the United States of America. And I love you. And I will see you next Saturday. And I will see you tomorrow.